What is up, guys? If you're watching this video, you're probably interested in how to build the best cleric, specifically a support cleric in Baldur's Gate 3. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to be showing you in this video. I'm going to be guiding you through each act and what I feel like the best support cleric is in each act. Just to give you a little background in the game, I'm going to load this game up. We are in honor mode, and this is at the reunion camp. I do have golden dice and have over 275 hours in the game. Was over 120 hours in honor mode and multiple honor mode successful runs. The first part of the video is going to be describing basically the itemization you're going to need and what is actually going on with this build. And then the second part of the guide is actually going to be explaining the leveling up process. The itemization will be broken up into two phases because specifically Act 2 requires or is optimal to actually have a different cleric than Act 1 and Act 3. So what we're going to be looking at, this is in-game cleric, and so specifically what we're going to be looking at is a level 12 life cleric. So very, very simple in terms of the leveling process. This would be all the way to 12, but leveling becomes a little bit more complicated because we're going to be doing respecs multiple times, and I'm going to explain why later. But let's first look at itemization. What I have on here is the Grim Skull Helm. This makes it where attackers can't land critical hits. This is really good because most of the time the cleric is going to have low mobility and is going to be in the front lines of a combat. For chest, we have Helldusk armor. I really believe that the cleric or the support class should be wearing your heaviest armor. This is basically the best armor in the game, and there's actually a way to achieve this armor in Act 1, which I'm going to be doing a video about and kind of explaining that process, although it may be patched out soon. But you can actually get this in Act 1 from Raphael, which is pretty crazy. But this basically makes it where you don't have to worry about proficiencies. So life clerics automatically get proficiencies with heavy armor, but if you are a regular light cleric, and these are the two subclasses that I'm going to be talking about in this video, you will not have this proficiency, but with Helldusk it does not matter. Infernal Retribution, when you succeed a saving throw, they receive burning for 3 turns. Fantastic ability. You get the ability to fly, and you have resistance to fire damage and cannot be burned, which doesn't matter that much because most of the time, by the time you actually get this armor, it's not going to be a huge help. But what does help is the extremely high AC. Now, this is one of the most important items on a cleric and something you're going to be running pretty much the whole game, which is the Hellrider's Pride in the glove slot. So you get this very, very early in the game in Act 1, and you can steal this from the Tieflings, specifically from Zelor. So this is really, really good. So when you heal another creature, it gains resistance against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Basically what that means is you automatically apply Blade Ward when you heal another individual. And it's strength saving throw 1, which isn't great. But believe me, in the early game, this is incredibly good because there's a lot of physical damage, and you're basically reducing it by 50%. So sink a Barbarian's Rage. Next up, one of the best wings in the game for clerics, which is the Whispering Promise. When you heal another creature, it gains a 1d4 to attack rolls and saving throws for 2 turns. So the combination of the Whispering Promise and the Hellrider's Pride is extremely potent in Act 1 and 3. We're going to be talking about Act 2 and how it changes things a little bit. But specifically by utilizing this combo, you basically put Bless and Blade Ward onto every person or creature you heal. So this is extremely, extremely good. Although Bless isn't that great by itself as an action, when you're just using it and actually applying it to a team as you heal them, it's extremely good. In terms of your amulet slot, you actually have 2 options because one is the Periaptive Wound Closure. When down, automatically stabilize at the start of the turn. This is a really good safety item. Really, really good. But the most important thing you're getting for it is potent healing. This means that if you have a spell that gives you a difference in range, so let's say like Preserve Life, evoke a healing energy, that's 36 health. But if I go and I look for, let's say, Mass Healing Ward, so it does between 5 and 8 healing, well, what that means is it will guarantee that you get 8 healing every time. So extremely, extremely important when you are running a Life Cleric for this ability. Now, the other spell slot that you can use here is Amulet of the Devout. What the Amulet of the Devout does is it gives you another Channel Divinity slot. So instead of having 2 Channel Divinities, you would have 3. That can be very good because you can basically cast Preserve Life again. The problem being that I feel the Periaptive Wound Closure is actually more important, personally. But this is kind of a situation that you could change between these 2 amulets depending on the situation. In terms of your boots, you do have several different options. I personally like in Act 3, Helldusk. You cannot be forcefully moved by a spell's foe or actions, and you ignore the effects of difficult terrain. There are a lot of enemies that can cast spells that give difficult terrain, so that's very good. And your movement speed is kind of slow as a cleric anyway, so you're going to be nearly always in the front line. But what I really like is that you cannot be forcefully moved by a spell's actions and spells. That's really, really good because it prevents you oftentimes from being pushed or knocked back out of the range of combat. And like I said, you have very high AC. You want to be standing near the middle of the combat. So that is a very, very good boot slot. In terms of your weapon slots, you have 2 options here, and I'm going to be talking over the benefits and detractors of these options. The first one is the Blood of Lathander. This one is really good. You get the level 6 spell Sunbeam, which is extremely good, plus 3 in terms of weapon enhancement. Lathander's Light, there's a lot of ways to use this. It basically radiates 6 meters around you, and it can blind enemies. Now, this is extremely potent in Act 2, and for Act 2, I would say always, always, always have Blood of Lathander. In Act 1 and Act 3, you can use this, or you can use the Fala Alov, or Fala Alav, whatever, however it's pronounced, the Sword in the Stone that you get from the Underdark in Act 1. This is another really, really good weapon, and I'm going to be talking about that weapon as well, and when one is better than the other. Shield slots. There's a lot of things you can do here. You could use the shield from Victonia, which actually does give, I believe, +3 to armor class, and is probably a little bit better than this. I personally, once I get this, I generally run Shield of Devotion, simply because of that extra level 3 Shield of Devotion aid spell. I do think that's quite useful, and also you gain 1 additional level 1 spell slots. Shield is up to personal preference. There's a lot of shields that work pretty well, and I will say this, because Shield Bash is not working in the game at the current moment, you have a lot of variety in what you want to do with your shield, and it is kind of up to personal preference. So now let's actually hop over and look what is going on when you are not playing Life Cleric, and why Light is better in certain cases, and what your itemization will be. So here we are, guys, back in Act 1, level 6. This is late Act 1 at the Grim Forge, and I'm going to be showing you some of the key differences in the build. So unlike Life Cleric, which we ran from about level 1 through 4, and also about level 9 or 10 through 12, so that's basically most of Act 1 and basically all of Act 3. Late Act 1, Act 2, we're going to switch to Light Cleric, and we're going to run this for 3 or 4 levels. Now, this is the primary reason why. There are a lot of things in this game, like the Luminous Armor. You can have Luminous Gloves. I'm still using the Hellrider's Pride. But Coruscation Ring, there's a bunch of things you can get in this game that basically they apply 2 conditions, which is Reverberation and Radiating Orbs. Both of these conditions are extremely, extremely potent in Act 2. And I would say, actually, a Cleric is probably one of the highest damage dealers against Undead in Act 2. A lot of the stuff that you normally use, like, for instance, my Sword CC Control Board, is not good against Undead. This is going to be a primary method to AoE damage Undead. And there's certain things, like the Rats and Gauntlet of Shar, that this is just extremely OP. So basically, let's talk about what gear you can get and where I think it would probably slot things in here. So for your helmet slot, I'm currently running the Spellshade Circlet. You really have 2 options here. You can use Spellshade Circlet, or you can also use the Holy Lance Helm. This will basically make it where if your opponents miss, you deal radiant damage, which is really good in late Act 1, which is about where I'm going to be getting to, and Act 2. And Act 1, very late in Act 1, when you go to the Githyanki Crash, is where you're going to get this Holy Lance Helm. I'm going to be showing these items as the video goes on. And yeah, it's just a really good item. Luminous armor, definitely your best in slot right now for your Chestpiece. When the wheeler deals radiant damage, they're going to cause a radiant shockwave. You're going to be dealing a lot of radiant damage. Hellrider's Pride, this is a bit of, I would say, a toss-up, because you're either going to be using Hellrider's Pride, which basically helps you in protecting your allies, or you're going to be using Gloves of Belligerent Skies, and both of those are quite good. So it just depends on what you want to do. If you want to go more into an offensive direction and try to stack more Reverberation and Radiating Orbs, or if you want to go into more of a defensive direction and use Hellrider's Pride. Boots of Stormy Clamor. When the wearer inflicts a condition upon a hostile creature, they inflict 2 turns of Reverberation. Now, what Reverberation specifically does is it basically applies a debuff. I believe it's the strength saving throws and a number of other saving throws, depending on how many stacks of Reverberation they have. Deals thunder damage when they hit 5 stacks and just straight up knocks them prone. So Boots of Stormy Clamor is really, really good here. In terms of Amulet, I would still run Periaptive Wound Closure. I think it's still the best. In terms of ring slots, definitely Coruscation Ring. I haven't gotten it yet, but Coruscation Ring is probably here, as is the Whispering Promise. In this playthrough, I took over another person's Cleric build, and these are all Honor Mode games, by the way, guys. I record 100% in Honor Mode now, but Whispering Promise would definitely be the second ring slot, along with Coruscation Ring. Now, in terms of your weapons at this point in the game, I would say you have 2 options. The best option, in my opinion, is the Fowler Alluve, this Sword in the Stone. What this basically does is it has a class action that gives you Shriek or Sing. So if I basically equip this, let's say I equipped it. Right before I equipped it, I do want to talk about the Staff of Arcane Blessing, which is my second best in slot here. So what this basically does, Bless grants you an additional 1d4 to saving throws and weapon attack rolls, and an additional 2d4 to spell attack rolls. This is quite powerful when you combine it with the ring that gives you Bless. So when you combine it with that ring, this can be quite good. So Staff of Arcane Blessing, another really good option on a light cleric. But anyway, let's equip the sword here and look at the Sing here. So when I do this, I can Shriek, so all enemies within 6 meters have a 1d4 to Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence saving throws. Affected creatures receiving an extra 1d4 thunder damage. That basically stacks along with the Reverberation that we were just talking about. And you can Sing. This basically gives a buff that is very similar to Bless, so it gives an additional 1d4 to attack rolls, Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence saving throws. Very good. They did nerf this a little bit. It used to be that you could actually enable this, de-equip the sword, and it would still have that effect. But they have since patched that. So a little bit unfortunate. But really going into Act 2, Radiant damage is going to be your primary damage source. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to basically be going and choosing Spirit Guardians. You're going to be clicking on Spirit Guardians, and you're going to be using the Radiant version of Spirit Guardians. This is basically going to cast a large Spirit Guardian circle around you, which is going to then be proccing the Radiating Orbs and the Reverberation. So like I said, Gloves of Belligerent Skies is a really good option here. Definitely 2 rings is going to be Coruscation and Whispering Promise. Boots, definitely Boots of Stormy Clamor. Helmet, you could either use Spell Shade or you could use Holy Lance. Cloak, I'm never a big, I don't think cloaks matter too much on clerics. Displacement Cloak is also a good option here. I do think it's good to have some shield pretty much all the time as a cleric, just to boost your AC. That's just me, but I do recommend it. So yeah, this is basically what you're going to be running in Act 1.5-ish to 3. So basically from about level 6 to about level 9 or 10, and then you're going to go back to life. So now, guys, in this final part of the video, I'm going to be explaining the leveling journey you're going to have from level 1 to level 12. So in simple terms, what you want to do is you want to be playing Life Cleric with no multi-classes all the way to about level 6. When you hit level 6, 7, that would be late Act 1, early Act 2 generally, and at this point you want to respec into a Light Cleric. Now, when you get your first feat at level 4, when you're a Life Cleric, the most important thing to get is Warcaster. The feat you want is Warcaster. That is honestly the most important feat that you are going to be having as a cleric throughout the entire game. You should always, 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 whether if you're doing Life or Light, be having Warcaster. For your other feats, most of the time ASI or Resilient is the two best options to take, but it's more up to you. But basically, level 4, get Warcaster. At level 5 or 6, when you get close to the Githyanki Crush, like I am here, I would recommend respecking and going completely into Light Cleric. You will be running Light Cleric now until about level 10, which is when you should be entering Act 3. At that point, you want to respec and go back into Life. So again, in very simple terms, Life from level 1 to about 5 or 6, the first feat being Warcaster. Then you go from level 6 to 10 in the game as a Light Cleric, and then you go from level 10 to 12 and finish the game as a Life Cleric. So in Act 2 is where you're predominantly going to be using Radiating Orbs and Reverberation. If you don't understand those and what conditions they proc and all about that, go back earlier in the video. You're going to be seeing on screen right now when you actually proc Reverberation and Radiating Orbs. But it is very important to understand this and why we are using it in Act 2. So that's really the leveling journey summed up. I hope you guys like this video. I put so much time into these guides. Please hit the like. Please share this video with your friends. And I'm also putting out down in the video description a sponsorship link that I have. I really like the shirts that I'm promoting here. If you would like to get a free pack for around $60, please click on them. That will directly support the channel, guys. It does take a lot of time. I would say most videos take around 10 to 20 hours to make between actually recording and researching the topic and trying to edit this in a way that gives you the most value. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, hit that like, share, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.